Good morning, everyone, or at least it's morning right now when I'm recording this video. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. My name is Megan. I am the witch here around the cauldron. If you're back for another video, hello, and thank you for coming back. Make sure that you're subscribed. If you want to be subscribed, give the video a thumbs up. If you want to give the video a thumbs up, all the YouTube algorithm things. Today's video was inspired by a book that I'm reading, and I want to talk about when we're confronted with our ego in our practice of witchcraft. This is going to be kind of just a sit down, chatty type video. I've got my coffee, I've got my notes, and I really just want to talk about what I've been feeling reading this book. So if you're interested, the book is The Witch's Path by Thorn Mooney. I have not finished it yet, but so far it's been really thought-provoking, and it's, got me thinking about a few different things. Being confronted with ego in witchcraft is interesting. And you know what? The idea for me to talk about this actually comes from one of the first exercises in the first chapter of this book. So she talks about how when we are in our practice or we've been doing it for a while and we kind of get in a groove, even if we end up in a rut or our practice kind of stagnates, we don't tend to explore other options. In the particular example that she uses in the exercise, she talks about how she really had a bias, I guess, a negative connotation to some different practices that are associated with the New Age movement. And I think she even says at one point the word that she harshly used to describe those practices was stupid or dumb. And I can relate to that, and I want to talk about it because I want to have an honest conversation about what can happen when we're confronted with our ego in our witchcraft practices. So being confronted with my ego in my practice, in my experience, it's like a smack in the face because I'm going along and everything is great, and something happens and then I realize those thoughts that I'm having about something else are brought upon by my ego, and I may not necessarily have any particular reason for having those feelings against some other type of practice. I guess before we continue talking about this, I do want to say that there are some practices, or I guess practices is the right word, that have a negative connotation for a reason, and they have valid criticisms against those particular practices. That's going to be true for basically every single practice in my experience. So some of the things that I'll talk about toward the end of the video that kind of make me go, they have negative connotations in my practice because of my ego, but there's also other things attached to them. And I guess I might talk about those other things too, why they're viewed negatively and how we can kind of combat that as well while we're also combating our ego within our practice. So what I mean when I say that our ego gets in the way of our practice is that maybe there's some sort of practice or healing type or spell work or divination that you don't want to do because of your perceived notion of what it means to do that thing. Let me just pick one thing. Scrying. I'll use scrying. I don't really scry. I haven't actually given it a full chance, I guess, but that's just going to be the example that I'm using. So when you're confronted with a practice that you're kind of about, like scrying, you immediately think, oh, I'm not going to do that. That's not for me. That's dumb. That's stupid or lame or whatever other negative descriptor word that you can use for a practice that you have feelings about. And as long as those feelings aren't rooted in that practice being 100% problematic, then it might be your ego getting in the way of you exploring a new practice. For me, this could be something like crystal healing. I have crystals. I think crystals are beautiful. They're wonderful stones, pieces of the earth. But crystal healing makes me go, meh. And part of that negative connotation comes from the fact that what I have seen online doesn't give me positive vibes when it comes to crystal healing, because a lot of times people will say that certain crystals can heal things like cancer or mental illness, and really go against the grain of our current scientific knowledge and understanding rather than flow with it. But that's not to say that crystals can't be helpful. And if I let my ego get in the way of trying it out, I'm never really going to know, right? So when your ego gets in the way of your practice, you can really stunt your growth. You can really hinder the development of your magical practice or understanding of other practices and techniques simply because you have feelings about not trying them for one reason or another. I mean, if I had a negative connotation against scrying and I never tried it out, never wanted to scry and try using scrying as a divination technique, I'm limiting myself. Because if I never try, I'll never know if it works for me. And what happens if I never try, but it ends up being something that I could potentially be really good at and that could be really beneficial to my practice? Again, I'll never know because I'm limiting myself by not giving something a fair chance. Now, that's not to say that everything that you set out to try is going to work for you. I could sit down to scry and do it every single day for 30 days straight and have absolutely no results. That's okay. I can still walk away from an experience like that having learned something. It could still be a learning experience. I might learn that I suck at scrying and it's just not for me, but at least I tried. At least I gave it a fair chance. And then moving forward, I can say, oh, yeah, you scry, that's great. I tried it, it wasn't really for me, but it's wonderful that it works for you. And I can then take away the negative connotation from that particular practice because I gave it a fair chance. And another thing that can happen if we let our ego get in the way of exploring these practices is oftentimes if we don't know enough about it or we haven't tried it for ourselves, we carry those negative feelings toward that practice and they get projected onto the people that use those practices. I have very negative connotations for the law of attraction because of my experience with how people have used it to victim blame. That's not to say that everyone that practices the law of attraction sees it that way. However, my experiences in law of attraction communities has given me that view. And so if I let my ego and my perceptions blind myself to the experiences of others solely based on my own experience, I hope that made sense, then I could end up projecting those negative feelings onto other people that practice the law of attraction through no fault of their own. I could meet someone who is, fantastic. They're a great person and they're supportive and generous and kind and compassionate and empathetic. But as soon as I find out that they practice the law of attraction, if I hold on to those feelings that I have about the law of attraction and push that on to the other person, then my perspective of that person can shift solely based on the fact that they said, yeah, I practice the law of attraction. Not that they said, oh yeah, I think poverty happens to people because they invite it into their lives, because that's the connotation that is attached to the law of attraction for me. Separating those out can give you a better experience interacting with the rest of the community. I had an experience like this recently, actually, where I had to really check myself because I could tell that I was letting that experience get in the way before I even gave the other person a chance. And the other person had not given me any reason to doubt them, to second guess them, or anything like that. But some of the things that they were doing or some of the things that they were saying very much reminded me of the law of attraction. And that's not something that I wanted to explore with this person. And I really had to check myself and say, you know what, Megan? They haven't said anything wrong. They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't expressed things to you that you're uncomfortable with. You need to stop projecting your negative experience of this particular thing onto this person who didn't do anything wrong. And I feel like that can be applied to a lot of different things within the witchcraft and spiritual communities. Is sometimes we hold on to our perceptions of certain practices based on our experiences, but I think if the person that we're talking to or the people that we're talking to don't show us those negative aspects, I guess, they don't behave in a way that matches our experience, we shouldn't necessarily hold those things against them. Now, obviously, this can get very tricky and very nuanced when we're talking about other things outside of spirituality and witchcraft, but it very much reminds me of the phrase, don't judge a book by its cover. Because what we see from these practices, usually, unless we dive deep into them and actually try them for ourselves, is surface level. You're seeing the cover of that practice, the cover of that person, and not really getting deeper into it and understanding the practice or understanding where the person is coming from. Now, if you try a practice and you realize that it is problematic and you just can't, then that's okay. Again, it's another learning experience. Having the awareness to check ourselves and check in with our ego and see if, our experiences are maybe coloring our view of a practice before we even give it a fair chance. Having that kind of self-awareness is really important, I think, for growing as a witch or growing as a spiritual person. So some things I'm sharing here, might as well just keep sharing, right? Some things that kind of make me go, and make me have to check in with my ego are law of attraction, crystal healing, I already said that one, and scripting. These are just 3 random things. If you don't know what scripting is, it's kind of like, again, surface level understanding because I haven't given it a fair chance. Scripting is when you write things out as if they have already happened as a way for bringing certain things into your life. So if you want to buy a car, for example, and you have a very specific car in mind, you would write a letter to yourself or write a scene basically that already happened describing what the car looks like, how it smells, how it makes you feel, as if it has already happened. And that is seen as a way of bringing things into your life. Manifesting, I guess, is the right word for that. I have not given scripting a fair chance. I haven't given crystal healing a fair chance. I haven't given the law of attraction a fair chance, if I'm being 100% honest. But going forward, I want to experiment. I want to try new things and try new practices and, have new, better experiences where I can say, yeah, hey, I tried that for a month or whatever, and it didn't work for me. Or, hey, I tried this thing and I was really questionable about it at the very beginning, but I did it for a month and oh my gosh, it works and it has changed my life in XYZ ways, you know? I guess the whole point of this is if you let your ego get in the way of your practice, if you let your perspectives that maybe have come from bad experiences get in the way of trying something that is not problematic on its own, then maybe try experimenting. Try small things first. If you're kind of iffy about crystals, get a crystal. Try a crystal. See what happens. I mean, the worst that's going to happen is it doesn't do anything and you learn that it just doesn't work for you. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This was sort of an impromptu video. I was really inspired to have this conversation and to talk about it because I feel like if this particular exercise smacked me in the face with my own ego, I can't be the only person who has felt like this and who could maybe benefit from hearing my thoughts. And this is also an opportunity for me to hear from other people who might have more experience or who might just have other things to say that I never thought about. So let me know in the comments below what you think, if you have had any experiences like this where you kind of let your ego get in the way of certain practices, or if you flipped that and if you tried something even though you were hesitant about it. I'd love to hear from you. I do go through and I read all of the comments. Let me know. And if you would like to join into more discussions and talk with other witchy people, go ahead and join my Discord. I have a Discord server. The link for that is in the description below. We have discussion questions a couple of times a week. There are plenty of people here. We're here to ask questions, chat, and share our experiences, and I would absolutely love to have you there. And yeah, until next time, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.